Hello and welcome to the Ascendant Art Podcast, where we are on a search for art that is ascending above the mainstream. This is Mike, your host, here with Vinny of Little Chat and Joey from Keeper's Cairn. How are you doing tonight, guys?
He's already trying not to laugh.
He is,
I know.
because this week's topic is just disarming to Mike because he doesn't understand the seriousness with which me and Joey will be approaching
Yes.
what we're going to talk about, because it's serious topic, serious stuff.
This may be the
Absolutely.
episode that destroys the podcast.
Or elevates it to a level that is completely unprecedented. So,
I mean, debates on this topic have been known to tear asunder even the most strong of friendships. We'll have to see.
yes, indeed. But hey, you know what? A big part of art is taking risks. So, of course, let's just roll the dice and see what happens with our entire show and our friendships with each other. Because tonight we are going into some pretty well-charted territory, actually. This is going to be known as the first debate in the Waifu Wars. Now, the thing is, I had not kept up a whole bunch on anime. I mean, I watched a little bit of it in high school, so I am so completely out of my familiarity here. But fortunately, I've got two very solid guides, and I have more interest than most to try and get caught up on this particular piece of culture. So, guys, I've got to ask,
Mike, wait, real quick. You just have to remember one thing.
Yes.
Even if you don't believe in the waifu believes in you.
I believe that. I totally believe that. So yes, guys, please explain to me, what is this waifu culture and why is it so easy to get pulled into it?
I think, well, number one, sometimes it's called waifu. In some circles, they also call it best girl. Who's the best girl from an anime? Yep. They're kind of used interchangeable. Mm-hmm. Waifu is a little more committed. Best girl is great, but waifu's, the one, that you're going to go
the
with.
one that you stick with.
Yeah, because obviously it's supposed to reference the term wife. Now, just to put this out there, I am married happily, and clearly my number one waifu of all time will always be my wife. No matter how heated I get into defending any choices on the waifu debate, I want to put that out there, because obviously you can get into a little trouble if it seems like you're not making sure that you understand that real world wives who do the work and help you and our partners and raise your children and all that great stuff are always superior to any anime waifu. And I do want to acknowledge that as point number one.
It's very, very important, because first, this is an important note on the podcast. So all three of us are married and have been for some time. And one of the interesting things is, when I started doing a little bit of background research on this whole waifu culture, I saw like an unusual number of guys who were also like bodybuilders, and like they would intentionally show themselves like just after workout, and then they would hold up like one of those like waifu pillows, I think. And it's because that's also a part of this stereotype, is that it is not just a stereotypical nerd living in his mom's basement. There's actually some kind of like cultural phenomenon here. And it'd be kind of interesting, one, to unpack that, and two, to then get into, it's like, okay, well, what are some of these characters that people like so much, and what are the reasons?
I'm sure Joey's going to be able to add in some of the stuff, but to me, anime is just entertaining quality programming. Like anime has so many different types of genres and content and story. And speaking from the perspective of our podcast, which is finding Ascendant art, which is art that is truthful. What's great about anime is it's pretty much just straightforward about telling the story it wants to tell. It's not really being bound up in agenda. It's really kind of committed to the story it wants. Now, on the waifu side, there's definitely fan service oriented shows that are being very committed to their truthful storytelling of hot anime girls doing things, which, there's value in that. To me, it's rooted in the fact that, and the reason people are so much and fans of it is because anime and manga and those things are just really great storytelling first and foremost, where it's just having fun with genres, having fun with content, having fun with stories and archetypes. We've talked about, stuff before, and, in the Western indie world, that's kind of taking lessons from that, like Common America. but to me it starts with telling a great story, because you can point out some stuff that we used to have on the Western culture, where you would have people who would love characters, and like Princess Leia from Star Wars before the sequels was probably an original movie waifu, if you so to speak. People would like, everybody had a crush on Princess Leia, gold bikini and all and everything like that. So I mean, to me, that I think it's always rooted in really good storytelling, and maybe I'd like to hear where Joey comes from out on that one.
Where do I come down on that one? I mean, I do think it is far superior storytelling than, I mean, most stuff out there right now, to be honest. And it may just be that, generally speaking, anime is presented in episodic fashion, so they have more time to work with, but the characters just seem more real than your movie characters, and generally they have a lot of personality. You know a lot more about them, you get a lot more backstory. And I mean, I think the waifu side of the house is just, yeah, you see these people a little more in their everyday life than just in the whatever great 90-minute adventure they happen to go on. So they become something a little more desirable, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that. And also, too, I guess a question I guess you guys, I've heard the phrase aspirational beauty thrown around many times. In the same way that, say, like in a superhero story, you want to see oftentimes, right, male and female characters, but like you want to see characters who will rise to some standard that you could aspire to say, like, this is the standard, like, I want to measure myself by. Do you think also part of this culture as well is, right, one of the great human needs is the search for beauty and truth? And so, in a sense, like waifu culture is an expression of that ongoing search and the many different aspects of what beautiful is.
I do think it's definitely an expression of the fact that Japanese creators like hot girls, and I mean, not to take it to, I mean, but we used to too. In the 90s, comic books were full of them. Like, I mean, Jean Grey, She-Hulk in the 90s, Rogue. I mean, the reason people love these characters is not, a lot of it was because they were attractive. I mean, Jean Grey, when you look at what her character looked like in the 1960s when she debuted versus 1990s Jean Grey when Jim Lee did that cover art and launched X-Men into the stratosphere right before in that 1992 animated series, she was very different and made to be more attractive proportionally and to the male eye than what she started at in the 60s. And that happened true for Invisible Woman, like pretty much every Marvel and DC character. I mean, had that happen. So, but we've lost our way. Whereas manga and anime have continued to be committed to aesthetically pleasing characters. You want, if you're watching it, if you're reading it, if you're buying it and consuming it, you're going to feel better about doing that by having characters that look great and that you like seeing.
For sure. And I'm trying to think for the various series out there. I guess also part of it as well is, along with the immediate appearance that's going to pull you in, there's also the, I guess, story aspect as well that kind of keeps it going from there. And I know that's going to start leading into a part of our debate. So tonight, for both of you guys, we're going to do a debate on who is the best girl. And there are going to be three types that we're going to discuss, which are the classic, the top tier, and each person gets a wild card. So now the reason I mentioned classic is, yeah, some of these are going to be the more enduring characters. And again, just one interesting thing I've noticed looking out on Twitter is I remember all the way back in high school watching the Sailor Moon series. That's probably the main experience I got with this, along with like watching a little bit of like Tenchi Muyo and then a few other like Western cartoons that had interesting female characters, right? But I noticed Sailor Moon still has a big following even today.
Yeah, that's to put it delicately. Yeah, I mean, Sailor Moon has what's the line from that old song? Has the boom anime girls that make me think the wrong thing.
Yes.
So, yeah. And some of that stuff, like, I mean, it stands the test of time. I mean, it was a show that was popular. It's still popular, and its character designs look a little dated compared to like the current level of anime that is made. But it's still,
for sure,
it's still very popular. It still moves merch, and part of it's nostalgia, and part of it, which is when we talk about a classic, and for the terms of this week's episode, a classic one is going to be from an anime or manga or series that was before the year 2000. Once anime really picked up steam in the Western cultures, which is around the the millennium, the money that got pumped into anime production and the quality and a lot of the stuff that went into it really elevated the game, so to speak. So for other purposes, it's going to be pre 2000. And there's a lot of room for people our age. I mean, I'll give away my age. I'm 40, and so I grew up watching. And I lived in Japan for a few years when I was younger, so I had a little more firsthand knowledge of seeing anime from at the time in the 80s when it was being made. So you got like Bulma from Dragon Ball Z sometimes gets brought up. You get the Sailor Moon girls.
Yeah.
You're going to bring up for some people it's Macross, or in America we called it Robotech when it got kind of chopped up and brought here. But there's Min May and Lisa Hayes from Robotech / Macross.
Oh yes, remember those now. Yes.
Voltron, Princess Allura. You could go, because before that got kind of a little jumbled right over there. There's a lot of classic ones that once you start thinking back to that era, you were like, oh, I don't think I watched a lot of anime, but then you realize I did. I just watched the Americanized version a little bit. So you probably saw Robotech. You did probably see Voltron, which was a very popular one.
Because you're right. Because in my case, since we're talking about ages, I mean, I'm 36. So you mentioned right around the year 2000 when it was taken off, because I remember high school, early 2000s. At that point, anime beyond like what Cartoon Network was carrying, you still had to order it or go to some specialty shop. And there was like a small core of kids in high school who did it, but it had nowhere near the popularity it does now. And definitely not the mainstream acceptance either.
I give a lot of credit to that, to Gundam Wing getting like absolutely epically huge on Toonami on Cartoon Network. It was one of the first times that like normie audiences were, since Robotech in the 80s and Voltron.
I think you're right. I think Toonami was the catalyst for a lot of this to get it over to American audiences.
Well, it started with a Sci-Fi Channel did the Saturday anime. And then Toonami kind of picked that up as Sci-Fi kind of lost steam with it. And they brought in more stuff.
Yeah, because
what was it? Trigun? Trigun was a good one. That was one of the first ones I saw that I really liked.
I think a lot of people our age might remember, and it was on Sci-Fi, but Vampire Hunter D was one of those first anime probably programs that a lot of people saw.
Yeah, hot take here. I didn't really like Vampire Hunter D, but Bloodlust was amazing.
Vampire Hunter D is a little dated at this point. It was one of those things where it was like, wow, this is really like edgy and cool when you're like 12 watching it on the Sci-Fi Channel. Yeah. But when you watch it again, it's like, this really doesn't really do much. I mean, it's definitely not going to hold up like Akira has as a classic of anime.
But have you watched Bloodlust?
I have not seen that one.
Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust is phenomenal. It's a movie, so.
Oh, good. That way I don't have to commit to like 26 episodes.
No, just I think a 90-minute full-length film, and definitely good.
Having given all that background, I'm going to go ahead and drop my classic waifu. Then it is Lisa Hayes from Robotech. I appreciated her commitment to actually doing her job, even in spite of having feelings for Rick Hunter and trying to keep away the Zentradi invaders while they got the SDF back to Earth. And then got right back in there when they rebuilt it at the end of the Macross version of Robotech before they moved on. So I know that there's a lot of people who liked who was the Zentradi woman who came in and married Max. Anyway, she gets a lot of the love from Robotech because she was a little more capable and everything. But I really appreciated the committed military dynamic that Lisa brought to the table. So that's my classic tier choice.
I have a very different classic tier choice. Mine is Deedlit from Record of Lodoss War, and I have several reasons for this. One, she's excellent sword fighter. She's an elf, so obviously she beats anything that Vinny says just off the bat. And in Record of Lodoss War's lore, as an elf, she's immortal. So like, I'll get old and ugly, but she'll still look really good. So that's like a like a double win, and she can use magic.
Well, Lisa can use the power of logistics.
There's nothing magical about logistics.
She will get the package to arrive on time.
I mean, when the SDF needed its new captain, she's the one who took over. There's something nice about someone who's capable of running like a space fortress.
I mean, I'll give you that, but at the same respect, Lisa is no match for a dark elf. Only elves are a match for dark elves. So, I mean, you run into a dark elf, you're screwed. I'm good to go.
So she's got to like stay out in space, I guess. Not get anywhere close to those fantasy.
Yeah, I mean,
regions.
you put that dark elf in
Right?
space, and she's not doing much at all. But Lisa's going to have her basically, was it a pressure suit? She went 0G. There were a lot of episodes where she was floating around, and Rick Hunter had to go and save her with the Veritech. So she managed to survive in space. So I think I'll call it I'm going to call this one a push, because it will depend entirely on the environment that they would be fighting their battle in.
I mean, that's true. It's hard to compare, a fantasy science fiction to a science fiction.
And that is why there is such a wide variety of waifus in this waifu culture. Now for our later on tiers, we've got all kind of dimensions we can use for comparing these characters, like who are going to be the best ones now to cosplay, who are going to be the ones to break out for popularity, and so on.
Well, in future episodes, I think we narrow the scope quite a bit so that we can do a more thorough deep dive on the competition.
Not to mention,
That's
like,
true.
we can
A lot
actually
of-
stack
a lot
them
of-
up and score them.
Well, phrasing.
Did I just do another like Petro Patriot joke out of my series?
Yes,
stacking
you
stacking
did.
up stacking up
It's
the
like, what are you
waifus
guys?
and
What are you
scoring
guys talking about? I'm just talking about scoring the characters here.
That'd be the second one you did, because when you opened this whole thing up, you started talking about how we were going to have really solid discussion, and I was like, I mean, we're going to get solid talking about this, that's for sure.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, so it's actually a particular piece of humor out of my series is that so this is a comic book project I'm working on called Petro Patriot, and the key is that the main character of that story is outrageously naive. So he is known to just say things that have double meanings, but because everyone else but him knows it, he will have a tendency to then turn around and double down on whatever it is he just said. So we will look for some more opportunities for that as this episode progresses. Now, it seems we've got a couple of great classic tier waifu characters here. This is probably the only one that I could even make any contribution in. But like I said, I have pretty limited experience myself. I know now, of course, Sailor Moon, the series, as enduring popularity. I think my favorite character out of that one was Mercury. So that was the smart girl.
Just because they're pretty doesn't mean it's weird that they're smart, Mike.
I know.
You know.
Beautiful and smart.
No,
Like
but
my wife.
See, there you go. Got to add the caveat. But what's great is usually when there's a group of girls within the anime series, they're going to start working into character archetypes, which is something that anime is a little more open about doing. So they're going to have like a smart girl, a jock girl, a bubbly airhead girl, and they're going to purposefully make sure they blend and put in that kind of thing. And then there's going to be the all-around winner, which is the kind of one that blends most of that together. Sailor Moon, obviously being a girl team of is going to have that pretty clear more than most.
And I was going to say, especially if you go on sites like tvtropes.com, where they go and like catalog all these different setups, like, and by the way, they do a great job of like breaking down all the possible teams of 3, teams of 5. And you're right. In order to tell a good story, you have to have these different archetypes so that they can play on each other. And you're right, Amy's definitely the smart girl, and also the only one that seemed to have any associated technology in the series too, because she had like that scanner glasses. But you're right, a lot of people like Jupiter because she was the tomboyish athletic girl versus
That was my pick.
As long as she was able to see if their power levels were over 9,000.
Yes, that was Amy's job. That was Mercury's job.
It's not an anime / show without throwing a Dragon Ball reference in there.
But Sailor Jupiter had 2 things going for her. In that one, she was the tomboy.
Okay, 2 things there, Joey. That's another one right there. She had 2 things going for her.
Well,
what are you talking about, Vinny? We're just listing off important properties.
We're just listing off important properties. The other 2 were that she was tall and that she used lightning. Lightning was her power, and that's like the coolest power of any of them.
What is nice about, I think, using this section of our conversation as a springboard to my top tier waifu choice, it kind of goes into, basically what anime evolved into, which is a whole section called the harem anime.
Oh, you're gonna win this one
because that it was like Ranma 1/2, and I like so I remember in high school, I remember Tenchi Muyo, where like you've got this one guy, and then all of a sudden, all of these beautiful alien women just all show up in his house and stay there and fight over him. Right.
That's correct, but that was one of the early precursors. But I'm talking about when it reached its final form in terms of great harem anime, and that's going to be Rias Grimmery from High School DxD, leading best girl waifu of the top tier harem anime that you can watch. It is NSFW. If you're under 18, you should not watch it, probably. But when you're over 18, you'll love it. But Rias Grimmery, best girl, I
was going to say, if you're under 18
realm,
or Baptist.
Yep. She's a demon realm princess. She has chaos magic power of the nth degree. Her assets supercharge up the lead hero character and empower his evolution, which is a very interesting conceit that he literally, in Dragon Ball Z, powers up by accessing more of her capabilities. So trying to say this the nice way, but so that would be my top tier anime waifu right there. Rias Grimmery, best girl, redhead. Good solid choice right there. I'm interested to see where Joey comes in on this one.
And like I said, this one's gonna be hard to beat, but I'm gonna stick with what I originally settled on, which is Rin Tosaka from the Fate series, because I think I'm realizing I have a type, and it's like magic users. But you're
a sucker for the magic girl.
Well, she's the future head of the Tosaka family. She's like a master wizard, and I mean, she gets Archer, who is like probably the single most badass of any of the warriors that gets summoned in that series. So she's pretty awesome.
I'm going to say that given your proclivities, that I can pick a strong runner-up, which would be probably Raftalia from Shield Hero.
Yeah. She's pretty good too.
I think we can both give her. That definitely qualifies for honorable mention from both myself and Joey. If you haven't watched Shield Hero, fantastic anime, getting ready to launch its second season coming up soon.
Yeah,
but
if it stops getting delayed.
Yeah. I was gonna say, give me a quick synopsis of that one.
So Shield Hero is what's called an isekai anime, where it takes a character from a world either that is ours or just like our normal Earth, and takes them either through reincarnation or some other conceit where they're like sent into a video game. They die and are reincarnated in a different world. They are summoned, and in this case of Shield Hero, he is summoned to the different dimension world planet. It's a fantasy,
but they recognize it as a video game in their world, but nobody in the world knows it's a video game.
So he gets sent to this world, and so there's a power-up system. It's like an RPG. He has to level up, and so they summoned 4 characters from our world, and each one is a hero of legend, a cardinal hero that they call him. There's a sword hero, a spear hero, a bow hero, and a shield hero. So it's like an RPG team. The shield hero is the one who would be the healing class and defense class, so he's kind of, the lame one, so to speak. He doesn't have the offensive weapon.
Also, the kingdom hates him for some reason.
Because there's a backstory current where the shield hero's character, because this has happened repetitiously throughout the history of this world where they summon these heroes. And the shield hero traditionally is the ally of the animal people.
Yeah, the beast
people. And he fights for their equal rights and such. So there's an element of class political divide where the ruling classes don't like the shield hero and what he represents because of that support. And in the very first episode, and this is what made Shield Hero controversial, he is falsely accused of taking liberties against a woman's choice and banished from the kingdom. And so he has to make his way with no support, no help, nothing. And so he ends up making choices that might be considered questionable. Like Raftalia is a slave girl he purchases, and he doesn't treat her meanly, but he purchases her to be his offensive weapon because he can't wield a sword. But over time, they become very loyal to each other, have a very strong bond. She gets released from her servitude and then actually voluntarily chooses to go back into that as a sign of her loyalty to him.
And just to drive that point home too, like, he did not insist that she rebrand with that sigil. She did it anyway.
And I think that's one of the reasons why some people of different political views had such a real problem with it, because Raftalia kind of represents a warrior trad value system. and where she's knowingly, willingly, and voluntarily choosing to follow this path to be the support for her best man, shield hero.
She is the embodiment of the samurai.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
Yeah. So
like
it's
not the shitty bad samurai who eventually caused the ninja to spring up and rise up against them, but like the true samurai code of service to your master.
So, and what's interesting there, of course, is one of the things I think entertainment is also supposed to do is allow you to basically go and experience life in some other context. And part of that is, yeah, you can go back and re-explore some of the old value systems then. So it sounds like they're doing that. And you're right. I wouldn't say modern audiences, but the, in parentheses, modern audiences of the woke crowd, I think that they can't handle the possibility that there are value systems other than their own, and that they're at least like worth considering.
Well, they also can't wrap their heads around the idea that people would think differently or make choices based on different values, because there's not an ability to see other people and their thoughts and their feelings and their principles.
And that's actually one of the things I really liked about Shield Hero as a show. One of the journey that Mafume, the Shield Hero, goes through is where, because of the perspective he gets, where he gets banished from like the ruling class, he has to see kind of what the choices the upper class make do to the average person in a village. He has to see what happens to he sees those slave markets and how beast people are abused, and he starts becoming very aware of different perspectives, and he becomes the bridge by being willing to listen and see the value in different, like, he doesn't actually outright reject the community that banished him. Once he eventually rights the wrong that got him kicked out, he starts to realize that, I don't like these people, but there's some good people here who I can work with. It's a really good show for giving you perspective, where you realize that not everybody is automatically right because they hold a very entrenched value, and you want to look at different things.
So speaking of other value systems, so you're saying there's also this possibility of being able to understand that you can work with people that are not 100% meeting your expectations even. I mean, what a radical idea, right?
Oh yeah, and
that you have over to learn how to get along with people that don't do everything you want the moment you want it.
Exactly. So that's really good. Now, speaking, having talked a little about Shield Hero, and I think we both went over our top tier choices. This leads to my wild card choice, which is going to be a very out of left field one from a show a lot of people may not have heard of, which is How Heavy Are the Dumbbells You Lift? And the name of the character is Sakura Habugi. But this show, which is really entertaining, and I actually watched it with my wife, is about learning. The lead character feels like she's a little out of shape and needs to right her life and kind of get things, worked out. And so she joins a gym with another one of her friends, and it's about her learning how to exercise and get healthy. And what's really funny is they actually in the show will stop and show you and go over in very great detail how to properly have good form for doing a squat, or how to do exercise. Like, oh, the gym's closed today. Here's home workouts we can do. I found a book on how to use the chair in your home office to do things. And they spend a whole episode on doing exercises when you don't have access to a regular gym. They do an episode on how to hike and get a good workout just by hiking, but it's still fun and playful. the character is, drawn, their version of overweight obviously is not anywhere near what we would consider overweight, but it
I
does
was going to
show.
say anyone who's spent time in Asian cultures know like the definition of overweight is so different. And I'm thinking also about like when I've gone like shopping for clothes in China, like you have to Chinese XXL is a US large. You got to add 2 sizes to kind of guess at like what the size is in American terms because we are
So
just
That
so
is how
much fatter.
confusing it is.
Yeah. So you basically, the rule of thumb would be you've got to Grinch your heart to be able to buy clothes in China. Like Mike's clothes size grew 2 sizes when he went to the store in China that day.
Yeah, and that also makes you realize just how much the definition of normal also gets twisted as well.
Well,
Yeah,
I have
so-
an entirely different issue with clothing from Chinese, etc. And that is that they don't make them for people that are as tall as me. So even if I buy the ones that are big enough to fit me around, they like barely hit my belt line.
That is true too. That is definitely true too.
All right, Joey. No, I need to.
Let's get back to the wild card. So we've got the how heavy are the dumbbells you lift or barbells you lift. Let's hear Joey's.
Yep, I got to hear this one.
Okay, well, this one actually probably would have been a good contender for your first choice on the classic front, but she's a little more modern. But I chose Talitha Testarossa from Full Metal Panic, the captain of the Tuatha De Danann, their submersible aircraft carrier.
No, you love the big mechanized.
I mean, she's a whispered, and she has like knowledge of super ancient technology, and like I'd have to wait 2 years because she's not quite old enough yet. But like she's a captain of a sweet mercenary group too. So, I'd have an inn. I could get on the ship. I could maybe get myself one of those sweet Lambda Drive mech things. There's a lot of advantages there.
I mean, that does beat someone who could teach you how to, squat properly.
In my opinion, yes. I mean, I know how to do a proper squat already because.
Yeah. I'm going to give you this one clearly because I went for more fun, but you definitely went for practical, like kick-ass anime girl. So, I mean, the only thing that I could have maybe topped it if I went Evangelion and went with, but or maybe a Gundam character, but.
Do you know Talitha Testarossa?
Yeah, I watched Full Metal. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I will be happy to share after this a picture of her with our prestigious host here because he probably has no idea who I'm talking about.
I think Mike's probably the one.
Like I said, dude, like my job is to not know what's going on so I can ask all the questions.
Well, there is a great picture of her holding an M60. So
I was gonna say those kind of weapons, you cannot go wrong with those pictures.
Not wrong at all. But it's interesting when you see about how anime kind of evolves over different time periods. And from pre-2000, like mech stuff was legit. Like I would say, and you go even like to like the early aughts, the number one like anime kind of milieu theming was always like kind of hard, like sci-fi, big engineering kind of stuff. Somewhere around like 2008, 2009, 2010, fantasy just like owned it, like took over. It was like a really dramatic shift if you were watching it. So Mike, when you were the stuff that you remember, like if it wasn't like the basic Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball Z stuff,
I was gonna say because I'm thinking about from Toonami, you had Voltron, Gundam, and Robotech, which you said what was the actual name of it again?
Macross.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You also had Ghost in the Shell back then. That was another really sci-fi futuristic kind of thing.
And it makes you wonder like kind of what the culture was that changed over time as well, because I remember outside of anime there was also a cultural change, because I remember as a kid like everything was about space and about NASA and a lot of sci-fi kind of stuff. Star Trek was also really big Western fiction then. I mean it still is big now, but I do remember there was a shift, I think, in culture generally right away from some of that, and it sounds like it's kind of the same expression in this case as well.
It's probably cyclic to some degree when you think about it. I mean, we had like Star Wars and Star Trek, which probably kicked off all manner of sci-fi around the world. But prior to that, there was Lord of the Rings. There was a lot of different fantasy stuff.
So yeah,
leading up to.
my thought is is Harry Potter kind of really, if you look when
Swung it
that
around.
launch was about mid 90s when Harry Potter like
Mhm.
launched worldwide. And by 2000 is also when Peter Jackson did the Lord of the Rings movies. So in that about 5-6 year period, fantasy like really took root. Probably I would say if you look from generationally, the middle school and high school aged kids in Japan who would then become the animators and creators grew up with really popular fantasy stuff from from the 90s through the early O's. And once they're in a position to make their own content, which is probably be right around 2010, boom, fantasy. Just like the Star Wars prequels were okay, but Lord of the Rings trounced them, in terms of cultural impact. So that would be that's my little 2 cents on maybe where that kind of came from,
Yeah,
which
because
would
you
be
had what you had the Harry Potter books, and then shortly after that, the Percy Jackson books came out. Like you had a whole bunch of
Mhm.
old fantasy stuff that was really digging into, the more medieval fantasy style lore. And then on top of that, like if you go watch Star Trek, right? Like their communicators, like we have those now. They're called cell phones. So it kind of became less impressive. We need bigger sci-fi, I guess.
And instead of
well,
and along with like the synthesizing machines, we got the 3D printers. Yep.
and well, if you just from going back to like where it maybe anime got it, I do think if you look for a non like Western and actual like anime inspiration, you can't leave off Berserk. Like Berserk started in the late 80s, early 90s, and was
Mhm.
so hugely popular in Japan, and
And
that
dark.
and super dark, but also very
Yep.
fantasy oriented, like dark fantasy. And so going back to like that culture, if you're getting it like the most popular manga series, or at least one of them was pretty much knee deep in fantasy. You're getting the American cultural influence with the Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, Lord of the Rings, and other things. So I do think Joey's right. Like the culture that shapes that generation that ends up becoming a creator kind of moves it on. I do think that's one of the reasons why like we've had a little bit of schizophrenic kind of stuff because a lot of what we were getting here was just kind of established IP and sequels, and we didn't really get a lot of new stuff.
Because I was gonna say, it makes you wonder now, like, what is gonna be the popular content for that current middle and high school generation and what they're gonna be producing. You're right, 15, 20 years from now in that case.
Clearly, it's going to be Petro Patriot and Keeper's Karen and all those other hot new intellectual properties coming out in the next year or two.
I mean, I can only hope.
We can all only hope. Just like I'm hoping to see some more like little Chad slice of life kind of stories.
Yeah, get them while they're young. Get them while they're young. No,
I mean, I am a sucker for slice of life too. And just think like 10, 15 years down the road, you can have a whole spin-off series about Lil Chad in college.
oh no, like when Pebbles grew up and the Flintstones did that. Oh,
Yeah. There have been a lot of series that have done that.
yeah. See, I look at
Didn't they
the
do that
one.
with the Rugrats too? Like, didn't they do a
Yeah,
Rugrats grew up
yeah,
thing?
they did, and it was terrible.
Yeah.
But I the ones I respect the most never did like so Peanuts. Charles Schulz never did like here's Charlie Brown like paying his mortgage. Like it's like and obviously with Calvin and Hobbes, it ended after about 10 years and never really
It was 10 years because it was all driven by Bill Watterson,
yeah.
and he didn't want to go any further than his strips. But I mean, yeah, that's another one. Like I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, and I've got tons of Calvin and Hobbes books up there, including The Lazy Sunday and The Essential, Indispensable, all those titles, if you remember those.
So for Little Chad, I don't think I'd ever really. I might do spin-off series maybe that are around different characters and different things, but I don't want the characters to really grow up. I'm kind of more classic and traditional on that, where my comic strip characters are going to be ever aged. Like they're always going to be that age that they're at, and it'll just be kind of ongoing.
Because in one sense, like if you grow a character up, they are a different character as well. Like
Mhm.
you do have to become somebody else when you grow up.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to see, like I said, people don't want to see Charlie Brown like turn into a defeated adult. Like he's the hopeful optimist child, right? Like that's why it's still appealing. Even when he's beaten down, he still gets back up and tries again.
So it's interesting. So we've definitely strayed quite a bit from our original topic about the waifu debates here.
Oh,
But
see, this is what
we've
happens.
got-
It's because we're gentlemen and we're not trying to get need like waifu debates can be like, I'm going to cut you for what you're saying about.
I mean, we could
waifu.
go a lot deeper too. Like,
Yes.
Now you reminded me of a story from high school where like I actually did get into one of those debates, and like one guy really did want to cut me over like some like Sailor Moon lore debate. It was, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, like maybe this guy's actually serious because of the way he's talking, but like, are we really going this deep into it, dude?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
you have no idea what you were getting into. You stared death in the face that day.
I mean, this reminds me of like when people would.
No, he was too weak, dude. I would
Yeah.
just pick up a stick and beat him with if I had to.
No,
Yeah, but
this-
but that's the other thing about waifu debates. Just because you thought it was over doesn't mean he thought it was over. Like, you would find out 3 years later, like, when he like joined the football team and became a brick shithouse, that he came back and like he would cask of Amontillado your ass and brick you up in a wall somewhere.
wait. I'm gonna make sure I get the term right. You know, he might be the yandere to come back and get crazy on you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the Yandere, yes.
Yeah, it's like
Because this will be probably another topic for future waifu debates. Is we need to go through all the deres, and you're right. A good series has a little bit of each of those as well.
if it's a harem series, it's gonna have all of them, and that's okay.
It's almost you have to have like
Generally
one
speaking,
character
yeah.
per.
yeah. I mean, well, they may not have the yandere, but they'll have the tsundere, which I mean, the yandere is a little more like niche, like where I'm going to kill you so no one else can have you.
Yeah.
Either that or I'm going to kill everybody around you.
Yeah.
So it's just us. Yeah.
But the tsundere is pretty much in every single one, which for those listening who don't know, tsundere is I pretend I hate you, but I really love you, or I don't realize I love you until after I punch you, girl.
Man, there's a couple of those too. Like Maid Sama's a really good one. Toradora was really good. Like, there's a lot of good tsunderes.
Yeah.
So like she bumps into you, but not on purpose or anything.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that Rem started as a tsundere on ReZero, but that one's got such a kind of like novel concept with him resetting by death that she's a tsundere one time loop, and then she's just like best girl another time loop. Rem is best girl from ReZero, by the way. Don't at me on that one, because I know that's whatever.
No, I'm gonna have to look up the characters and like pick a different one just to like debate you on Twitter, dude.
Oh, really? Are you gonna you're gonna go there?
I didn't learn my lesson from high school, dude.
You can ReZero has an awful lot of choices, right? I mean, it's a fantastic show. I would recommend like anyone who hasn't watched it who likes anime. It's only got 2 seasons so far. Amelia would be the lead girl that Subaru, who's the lead male, is gonna be with. But and this is why Rem's even best girl. She's like, I'm okay being number 2. That's cool. You love me a little bit. You can love her too first. I'll be here for you. She's like super supportive. And you'll watch it, you'll get it. It's hard to describe in like 3 minutes, but
I'm sure it's one of those like.
And Mike, you're gonna be like Amelia. I can tell you're gonna be like either that or I'm gonna say all right. So your homework assignment is to watch the show, because I'm pretty much gonna think that your pick would be Krush, who is once you see it, one of the conceits is they're looking to elect the next queen of the realm, and there's like 5 camp. So each one puts up their candidate. And this girl that I think you're going to end up liking is the one that's like the business minded, runs things, like is there because of her capability for running organizations. And or Amelia might be. I know after season 2, people are more on team Amelia, but it's because they're losers who forgot about Rem, who's best girl. This is what happens when you get in the waifu debate.
Because I think if we really got into this debate, you could almost do an episode, or we could do multiple episodes on just the anatomy of the waifu. And of course, there you go.
Okay,
There's
be
another one
careful
of our
again.
double meaning
Yeah.
jokes right there.
I mean,
Well,
well, there's
I'm talking about the full set of character properties.
oh, they do have a full set. Every single one of the top tier anime waifus always have a full set. That's unless
They all have a full set of properties.
as long as you're not a lolly, because that's not allowed. No lolly.
No.
That's no.
I mean, the Waifu Wars are going to rage on one way or the other because I mean we have
Because
introduced
what it comes down-
six competitors with a couple extras here and there. Like,
And the thing is, we haven't even talked about our own set of waifus yet, which we need to
yeah, they are
close
legion.
it out on. Yeah, but the other thing too is that also it's because look, everybody has different preferences, and again, this is like one theory I like to kick around is a lot of entertainment is kind of like life plus. It lets you see different flavors, different aspects of life, and then you kind of like have that experience. You share that experience with what the creator creates, and then you say like, okay, like out of these characters, what did I like and why do I like it? So you have that along with like just the direct of like, I'm watching this and it's fun, right?
That's true, but my choices were right, and they are the correct
Bullshit.
ones.
And also,
The systematic definition for it, yes.
can I do a last second change on my wild card all of a sudden? Because I just realized there's a better choice.
You're abandoning your waifu, dude.
Look at that.
I'm
See,
abandoning.
Look at that. This is the kind of
Dressrosa.
no loyalty. Loyalty is gone.
I don't need loyalty. You
This
will
is-
agree with this choice. You
This is-
will probably agree that this choice beats all choices up to this
look,
point.
This is because Joey is a former member of the Navy, so he's used to having girls in every port. He just
I go from port to port.
He just goes
just
port
do
to
it.
port. He just abandons them.
But
So yeah, let's.
Vinny, meat from Food Wars.
Oh shit! Yes.
I don't know that there's anyone we've mentioned that can beat her.
Because I mean, in terms of the practical skill set of like a take-home waifu, she's got the looks and she's got the capability to run a keto diet like no other. So-
And if I remember correctly, she's American, which
She's-
she's like win.
I mean,
And she dresses like she's at the beach all the time.
There's no way you can tell she's not American since she wears an American flag bikini even in the kitchen,
Yeah, it's great.
which is
Which
she's
is
not-
that is so American.
Oh yeah. So and that's why they call her Meat Me, because her specialty is meat, because
Meat.
she's the American chef. So she doesn't deal with these other things.
Yep.
But you're right. That's a winner. I can't because you've got to judge the waifu on the practical skill set, right? I mean, she's got the looks, and she's clearly going to be the best cook out of any of the choices that we've discussed.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch Food Wars, you know what happens when you eat the food these people make. It's very dramatic. It's life changing. It's awkward, and you don't want to do it around people.
It's liberating, if you will. It frees you.
Yeah, it's TVMA in terms of your response to the food you consume.
On a little bit different note, I don't know why, but like on so many like food and chef shows, like they have this idea of like someone eats the food and they're like, wow, like this is so amazing, and they have the dramatic response. I've had nice food before. I've been to nice restaurants before. I don't think I've ever had that reaction to anything.
If you want to see dramatic response, if you want so watch Food Wars.
Okay.
And then you'll know what a real dramatic response to food being eaten really is. And you'll like, I don't even want to describe it because I don't want to ruin it. I want you to go in with just not prepared for the first time you see that sequence that in the Food Wars. It's on Netflix. I think it's also on.
Okay.
I think it might be on Hulu. I know it's definitely on most of the anime. Like I think Crunchyroll has it. YouTube, you could just watch it on YouTube because there's going to be, if you just type in Food Wars, you'll see footage of people eating and what happens, and you'll get it's perfect. It's great. But yes, I defer to Joey. His one wins.
I think in that case, this is also a really good transition then when we talk about people's reaction to food. So I think one thing we can do to close this out, because we are all creators, we have all created at least one waifu in our series. So like, why don't we also go around and talk about those? I could start with mine, or I could end.
Well, I
Oh,
mean, you should probably go first
Yeah,
because
I'm
you
talking.
haven't
Yeah, this
participated
is
in the
At
waifu
all.
debates
I was
yet.
gonna say this is one where you can
I
actually
just
get into it, man.
I just barely got in on the classic one. You're right, because I had so little familiarity. And that's also, by the way, this is what makes it so interesting to me, because now it's like I'm trying to create characters with waifu potential. So it's like you're almost having to go back and study this if you're not familiar with it already. But yeah, so I've got a pair of sisters in the Petro Patriot story, Stacy and Grace, and because they do develop quite a bit, I have to hold a lot back. Although one of them will go through kind of a transformational process very early, so early that in fact issue 0, the preview comic, is going to be about Stacy's character, in which this is a superhero action comedy. So Stacy becomes the grid girl. She is a super speed character, as well as with the tagline, the bad girl who looks so good, because she's been branded as a supervillain in her dystopian world. And kind of some other interesting properties about her are, of course, she very quickly forms a relationship with the carnivore, who is someone who can knock sense into people with a T-bone slap. But then for her herself, one of the ways she uses her super speed is she likes to go out hunting, except in her case, she quite literally can just jump and run down an animal faster than it can get away. So it's almost, so part of her characters, it's almost like in the same way that like a cat will like bring home like a bird or a mouse home, she'll just like bring a deer home. So she knows how to both get the animal and prepare it. So that's one of the practical skills on top of this speed themed superhero, who also does a great job of making a fool out of her enemies, because that is the comedy aspect of our story. I don't know. Any questions you guys got on that?
When can I buy it? I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding, because I will be buying it as soon as it's available.
Same.
What I will say is I will be sharing some art drafts with you guys after this. For the people
Awesome.
listening, just keep watching the Catalytic Comics channel. I will show some pieces of the preview when they're ready, and eventually the full preview will be available before we start getting into actually producing issue 1 next year. So do keep an eye out for that.
So I guess I'll go next then. I mean, people hopefully have been enjoying Little Chad. So my created waifu is the actual wife slash mother in the comic, Stacy Roark of Little Chad.
So we've got 2 Stacys, dude.
Yeah, I mean it's a meme thing, so
It really is.
It was inspired, right? Like clearly my comic strip is taking meme names and kind of using them to my advantage. But in terms of the character, Stacy is pretty much based on my wife, like so, and like the way she talks to little Chad, the fact that she homeschools, or little Chad, who my wife homeschools our son, and the kind of the background that came up with. She may or may not have a sister that's very Aunt Karen like.
Named Aunt Karen.
No Karens in the family, but perhaps maybe. I mean, my wife's got 9 brothers and sisters, so there's a lot of choices to be able to make.
The actual, I see.
Yeah. So I do take some inspiration. I take a lot from my actual life when it comes to that. I get the ability to actually basically write my waifu in real life into my waifu place on the comic strip. So that's actually pretty fun. So I do feel pretty grateful to be able to do that. So if people do read the comic strip and want to get an idea of what it's probably like at home for me, Stacy, the character in the comic strip, is pretty much kind of a representation of my wife, who I won't dox and name because she's not on she didn't sign up for that to be on a podcast. So I'll just leave it as my wife as in terms of commentary. But she's awesome because she does listen. And so hopefully she doesn't feel too bad about the amount of time and effort I put into debating which animated waifus were better and why.
I was going to say, I think we kept it quite classy in this debate, so I think we have no concern.
I mean,
there.
I'm going to be honest. My wife has watched a lot of the anime shows with me, so it's not
Yeah.
like she didn't enjoy some of them too. She's also watched Food Wars, so she'll know who Joey's talking about. I think Joey's wife watches all the animes with him too, so he's kind of in the same situation.
Oh yeah,
Mike-
yeah.
Mike,
Once she hears that choice, she will agree.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say
and-
it's funny when you mentioned this, by the way, Vinny. But yeah, like when I talked about my two female characters, the other one, Grace. What's funny is that one is the most like my wife, and so because of that, anytime I do comic scripting involving that character, like my wife actually consults on like, no, this is what you should do to make it more fun.
And that's a good thing. You also want to make sure that your characters have distinct voices. I think one of the traps that a lot of creators fall into, and this is one of the things that makes fan fiction so fan fiction versus like actual quality literary craft. As I speak, being a writer of 4 comic strip panels at a time, is making sure your characters have their own distinct voices that are right for that character, and not just you as the author spouting your own thoughts out of a different person's mouth every single time. So the idea that your wife is being involved in the character that is sort of based on her to help make sure that it stays a very separate and independent character is really awesome. And any of the people listening to our podcast who are making their own content, I think is never lose sight of the fact that you're not just trying to get to an end point on your story. You're trying to make these people in your characters as real as possible to their own mindset. If you watch a lot of YouTube content by Mauler and Literature Devil and some of those other guys, one of the things when they talk about that, I think that comes up repeatedly, is that characters do not act with the logic they should, given the characters they're supposed to be. So that's just a fun little part that hopefully will help people justify listening to an hour on waifus.
I was going to say
there's one more waifu, which would be
That's
the
right.
one that I'm going to talk about. Not the only one I've made, mind you. I do have.
But still, we're waiting to like, we're kind of like setting up for like the climax with you.
Yeah. Well, the one in my story, the Keeper's Cairn, is an elf wizard, go figure, by the name of Tessa Morningdew. She is an elven noble, but her big conflict in the story is that as a member of the Order, which is the guild of wizards in my world, she, in an effort to support her brother, joined an adventuring party with him. His adventuring party, in fact. The problem with that is it makes her what's called a company wizard. And company wizards are those wizards that then turn to adventuring instead of focusing on their research. So it's kind of a dead end for their wizarding career. It's very frustrating for her, but she's a really fun character because she has a lot of these conflicts with the Order. There's a lot of kind of a bad taste in her mouth because of the way the politics has treated her. But when she first meets Damocles, he's been isolated on an island this whole time. So he's very lacking in social graces, kind of gets annoyed at everything she does at first. And she just kind of ignores it and acts like she doesn't notice when he gets pissy about these things, and just keeps being real friendly and overly kind with him. Until eventually, about midway through the story, there's a scene where they both start nerding out on some research that he was doing, and he realizes, oh, holy shit, she's awesome because she's as crazy about this research shit as me. She loves the magic science too. And that's when it kind of starts to take a turn toward the romantic. Up until that point, he was just like, this what is she doing here? Why is she bothering me? Like, she's just getting in the way. And it kind of just shifts as the story progresses. So it's been really fun to kind of play that angle.
And I know, because I'm definitely looking forward to when the Keeper's Cairn comes out, because I want to check out that book. And just as you're describing it, see, I gotta work on my like descriptions when I introduce characters as well. When you've got a character who has just like these dynamic relationships with multiple groups of people, they've got friends, they've also got enemies, or they've got situations they're frustrated with. You're like that. Those are all great components for a good story.
Great story is always number one. I'll harp on it again, again, silly for me to be the one harping on it when my story elements are, again, 4 panels at a time with maybe 12 to 15 lines of dialogue max.
Right, but you have the longer arcs that we see playing out.
But I was going to say also too, it's not that there's somehow less story, but it's actually, I think there's a whole other art form to packing that much story into a small space.
I do think it's a very useful exercise to try to get as succinct as possible. There's definitely been times where I've had very wordy comic strips drafts, and by the most of the time, the start from draft one to the final product that gets put out is trying to remove as much extraneous dialogue that doesn't need to be there. Partially because with the comic strip format, you want to make sure that you're not, crushing word balloons everywhere, because it's going to, there's not a ton of space for it. You can't kind of, with a comic strip where you've got 4 panels, you don't have the option of like a comic book where for one page you can alter the structural layout to really splash page or make it conducive to, a specific thing you want to do. But
it needs to be really punchy.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's really good exercise for people to, because I think in life, and one of the things that, and I got this in college when I was learning how to write papers for presenting for, because I went to school for political science, and one of the classes was training you on how to like do presentations as an like analyst if you were working in a government job. And the professor, who was a practical, experienced guy at it, was like, never do in 3 lines what you can do in 1, never do in 10 words what you can do in 5. Your job is to be in and out, and you might have 5 to 10 minutes max to actually speak what you might have written a 50-page paper on. So make sure you can boil down that entire 50 pages to 5 minutes of talking, because in the end, that's what you're going to be briefing. And that's all that's going to matter is 5 minutes, because that's the time you'll get.
Not to mention half these guys are tired in meetings anyway, so you may only get 30 seconds of attention.
Exactly. So being succinct and trying to boil your idea down to the most basic concept is a great tool to like exercise things out, because you can always kind of add flair and padding, you can, and some and like frosting to a cake, but the core element is really what you got to make sure you're hitting. And so you need to know your idea that you're trying to get across, make sure you're getting that across, and then you can always enhance it.
No, that's good. Anything else you guys want to bring up before we start closing it down?
I'm just super disappointed that Joey pulled that wild card and just crushed me at the end, because I was pretty confident that my pick was nice and fun and whimsical, and kind of, even though not as practical as the giant mech wielding kind of sub driver would have kind of pulled the day. But damn it, meat just.
Well, the Waifu Wars are far from over.
Oh, no. We're gonna do this again, and this next time we're gonna pick something, and we're gonna let Mike come to the table. We'll do a show where he has to watch it beforehand and maybe and do it, because I want Mike to be knee deep in these discussions.
That's right, a discussion about all of the properties, as we discussed earlier.
The assets, the properties, the twin elements that every waifu has to bring to the table. Practical and capable. What did you think I meant, you dirty people?
I was thinking of like, the character sheet. I'm like, wait, what are the twin properties in the character sheet? Like, I know about things like, the personality traits, the costume design, but I don't know. Maybe we'll get this explained on a future episode. We'll see.
The twin properties, they usually, it's the D properties that really matter.
Oh, I will say, digging into this, I mean, she's not technically American, but she wears the American flag, so.
Well, I mean, in America, we let people get away with that. Like, you don't see that in China, is all I'll say. Actually, you don't see it in most other countries. But all right. So I think we're back on our tangents here. So I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and close it down. And guys, it's been a great time. Learned a lot. The debate is certainly not over as we continue our search for the Ascendant art. Have a good one.
The Ascendant Waifu.
There you go. That'll be the next episode.
Let's call that. We could even call that.
It's AW, because it's the one that makes you say, "Oh."
Oh, yeah. There you go.
That is a perfect cap and preview for a future episode. All right, guys. Thank you. We're shutting it down.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.